As we drove home from the party hosted by Lisa and Joe Parker, silence filled the car. Beth sat stiffly, her arms crossed, pressed against the window as if the space between us was poisonous. Her lips were pursed, her eyes cold, and I could feel the resentment radiating from her like a furnace. It wasn't hard to figure out why she was so furious. She believed I had ruined her night. I knew I should feel guilty. I had embarrassed her in front of our friends, the mother of our 3 children, Natalie, Emma, and Mark Jr., but guilt didn't come. Instead, anger and disbelief churned inside me. I stared at the road, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. How had I ruined the evening? I'd picked the wrong key, that's how. But let me explain. The Parkers' parties were anything but ordinary, and that was a detail Beth conveniently failed to mention. At the end of the night, the wives were expected to toss their house keys into a bowl. The men, one by one, would pick a key at random and spend the night with the woman whose key they pulled, an arrangement that involved more than just conversation. When I realized what was going on, my blood ran cold. We'd been married for 10 years, and never once had Beth hinted that she wanted something like this. The shock paralyzed me for a moment, and then fury took over. I grabbed her arm, dragging her into the kitchen, away from the crowd. "Did you know what kind of party this was?" I demanded, trying to contain the rage boiling inside me. Beth gave me a nonchalant shrug, her lips curling into a smirk. "Yes, I knew," she said, without a hint of remorse. My heart pounded in my chest. "And you didn't think to tell me?" "Of course not," she replied calmly. "I knew you wouldn't agree if I did." I stared at her in disbelief. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she'd just said. "You're damn right I wouldn't agree. And I still don't. We're leaving." "No." Beth rolled her eyes. "We can't leave, it would be rude," she said, as if this was just a trivial misunderstanding. "Besides, it's just one night, Mark. It could spice things up between us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I don't need this kind of excitement." She softened, her eyes pleading. "One night, and I'll feel alive again. Not just a mother or a wife, a woman." Her words stung, cutting deeper than any insult. I took a breath, steadying myself. "I'm not interested, Beth. And I won't let you do this, other." Ignoring her protests, I dragged her back into the living room, where the guests were gathered around the infamous bowl, ready to pick their keys. Beth tried to pull away, but I held her firmly. I reached into the bowl, my fingers quickly finding our house key. It was unmistakable with its blue keychain. I held it up for everyone to see. "I wasn't informed about the nature of this party," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I'm not sharing my wife with anyone. My marriage means something to me, and I won't participate in this." The room fell silent. A few guests exchanged awkward glances, while others muttered under their breath, but I didn't care. I turned to Beth, whose face was now a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "It's your choice, Beth," I said quietly but firmly. "Come with me now, or stay here, but if you stay, don't bother coming home." Her eyes widened, her fury bubbling to the surface. For a moment, she looked as if she might argue, but instead, she forced a tight smile and addressed the group. "I suppose it's best if I leave," she said, her voice laced with frustration. Beth stormed past me, heading toward the door. I followed her silently, feeling the weight of our crumbling marriage pressing down on me. "You're unbearable," she hissed as we got into the car. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? We'll never be invited to one of their parties again." I clenched the steering wheel, trying to keep my voice steady. "Embarrassing? What about the fact that you planned to sleep with another man tonight, without even telling me?" Beth crossed her arms and glared out the window. "You could have picked another woman," she muttered. "We both could have enjoyed ourselves." I shook my head in disbelief. "I don't want another woman, Beth. I've been faithful to you for 10 years. And now, after all that, you want to be with someone else." "It's just one night," she said flatly, as if that made everything acceptable. "That's not too much to ask, is it?" "It's way too much," I shot back, pulling the car to the side of the road. "If it's that important to you, Beth, go back. I won't stop you." Her eyes widened as I made a sharp U-turn, driving back toward the Parkers' house. "Mark, what are you doing?" I gritted my teeth, anger boiling just beneath the surface. If you need to sleep with another man so badly, then do it. But if you go through with this, we're done. Our marriage is over. Her face turned pale. You don't mean that, she whispered. Oh, I mean every word, I replied, my voice cold and steady. Go ahead, Beth. If that's what you want, go find it. But don't expect me to be waiting for you in the morning. Beth hesitated, her hand trembling on the door handle. Will you at least pick me up in the morning? She asked quietly. No, I said sharply. Whoever you end up with can give you a ride. She scowled, her expression shifting from hesitation to defiance. You're making this sound worse than it is. It's exactly what it sounds like, I shot back. You're about to sleep with a stranger, and you expect me to be okay with it? Beth sighed, her frustration bubbling over. It's just one night, Mark. 1 second would be too much, I said firmly. If you do this, it's over. She stared at me, her hand still on the door. Then, with a defiant smile, she opened it. See you in the morning, Mark, she said, stepping out. No, you won't, I whispered, watching as she disappeared into the night. Tears welled in my eyes as I drove away, leaving her behind. In that moment, I knew that my marriage was over. Beth had chosen a stranger over me, over our life together, over our children. The weight of her betrayal settled heavily on my chest as I remembered my father's words. If a woman even considers sleeping with another man, she's already crossed the line. Driving away from the Parkers' house, I tried to suppress the storm of emotions raging inside me, but the tears came anyway. Beth had chosen a stranger over me, over the life we had built together, and over our 3 children, Natalie, Emma, and Mark Jr. It felt as though every moment we'd shared, every promise we'd made, had shattered in an instant. The kids were spending the weekend at my mom's house, which gave me time to gather my thoughts and figure out what to do next. I drove aimlessly through town, hoping Beth would call, admit she had made a mistake, and ask me to come back. But as the minutes passed and the phone remained silent, I knew she wouldn't. The reality hit me hard. Beth wasn't coming back that night, and maybe not ever. Eventually, I headed home, my heart heavy with disappointment and anger. As I pulled into the driveway, my phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart leapt, thinking it was Beth. But when I looked at the screen, it wasn't her. It was Ted Mason, one of the men from the party. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hey Mark, it's Ted. Beth gave me your number, Ted said casually. She really hopes you'll come back. Tonight's supposed to be unforgettable, and she wants you to be part of it. His words made my skin crawl. Screw you, Ted, I snapped. And screw everyone at that party, including my wife. I hope you all get exactly what you deserve. Without waiting for a response, I hung up and stormed inside. Rage and heartbreak churned inside me. Within minutes, I packed 2 suitcases, clothes, a laptop, and some essentials, loaded them into my car, and searched through the drawers for our marriage certificate. Finding it, I tore it into pieces, each rip feeling like a small release of the overwhelming pain. Then, with a hammer, I flattened my wedding ring, pounding it until it was beyond recognition. I left the shredded certificate and mangled ring on Beth's pillow before locking the front door behind me and driving off into the night. I considered staying at a motel, but something compelled me to circle back to the Parkers' house. A few cars were still parked outside, and I saw some guests chatting on the driveway. But Beth wasn't among them. Whether she was inside with a new partner or already gone, I didn't care anymore. Eventually, I found a cheap motel in a nearby town. It wasn't much, but it had a secluded parking lot, which suited me just fine. I bought a 6-pack of beer from the convenience store next door, retreated to my room, and flicked on the TV. I cracked open the first beer, hoping it would dull the pain. Halfway through the second, my phone buzzed again. It was Beth. Against my better judgment, I let it go to voicemail. Moments later, I listened to her message. Mark, you're being childish. Beth's voice rang through the speaker, calm and unfazed. Ted told me what you said. How many times do I need to explain? It's just one night. I'll spend a few hours with someone else, and it won't change anything. I'll make it up to you tomorrow. Just wait and see. She was treating this betrayal as though it were nothing more than a minor misunderstanding, a trivial indulgence that didn't mean anything. The anger boiled over. I called her back, and she answered on the third ring. "Hey, babe," she said lightly as if nothing had happened. "Brian and I just got into bed, so I can't talk long." "Shut up, Beth," I said coldly. "This is the last time you'll hear from me. You have no idea what you've done, but you're about to find out. Enjoy your night with Brian, because when you wake up tomorrow, our marriage is over." "Mark, don't be like that," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "Please, let's talk." "I hate you more than I ever loved you," I cut her off. "Expect divorce papers next week." I hung up without waiting for a response. 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed again. I ignored it, but another voicemail popped up. Her voice was unsteady, cracking under the weight of the moment. "Mark, please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. I love you. I just needed this one night. Why can't you understand? Brian and I are barely getting started, and you've already ruined everything. Please, come back home in the morning and we'll figure this out." Her words were like poison, each syllable twisting the knife deeper into my heart. I finished the rest of the six-pack, trying to drown out the thoughts of Beth lying in bed with another man, but the images kept coming. It didn't matter how much beer I drank, the betrayal was too real to escape. Eventually, I passed out, tears still wet on my face. I woke up in the dim light of the motel room, my head pounding from the beer and the weight of last night's events pressing down on my chest. The betrayal felt even heavier in the morning. Beth wasn't just careless, she had thrown away everything we had built together. And now I had to figure out a way forward, not just for me, but for our children. After a quick shower, I called my mom to check in on the kids. She sounded concerned and told me that Beth had already called, crying and saying she didn't understand why I was so angry. My mom reassured her in no uncertain terms, "No man would be okay with what you did." "I need a few more days to sort things out, Mom," I told her. "I'll come to pick up the kids soon." "You take all the time you need," she said warmly. "They're safe here with me." I grabbed my keys and headed to a nearby diner, hoping some breakfast and coffee would clear my head. As I sat by the window watching cars pass by, the enormity of what had happened sank in. 10 years of marriage, 3 kids, all reduced to a handful of broken promises and one reckless night. I realized I couldn't just let this slide. I needed legal help to protect my rights and, more importantly, to make sure Beth's actions didn't jeopardize my time with the children. The last thing I wanted was to lose them. An old college friend, Lee McRae, came to mind. He had built a reputation as a sharp family lawyer. Without hesitation, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. Lee answered after a few rings, his familiar voice instantly making me feel more grounded. "Mark, it's been a while, man. What's going on?" I explained everything, the party, Beth's betrayal, and my decision to file for divorce. Lee listened carefully, his tone turning serious. "That's rough, Mark," he said. "You've definitely got grounds for divorce, but custody might be tricky. Courts usually favor joint custody unless you can prove she's unfit as a mother." "She's been a good mom," I admitted. "But her judgment is completely out of control." "We can work with that," Lee replied. "If she's exposing the kids to inappropriate behavior or people, that'll help your case. But either way, we need to act fast. I know one of the best divorce attorneys in the state, Sandra Simmons. She doesn't mess around. Want me to set up a meeting?" "Yes, please. The sooner, the better." "Hang in there, Mark," Lee said. "You'll get through this." After the call, I felt a glimmer of hope. At least now I had a plan. I had no illusions. This was going to be a long and painful road. But knowing that I wasn't alone made all the difference. Later that evening, I met Lee and another college friend, Doug, at a beachside bar. We ordered drinks and I laid everything out for them. I told them about the betrayal, the humiliation, and the overwhelming sense of loss I was carrying with me. Doug shook his head. "I can't believe she'd do that to you, man." "Yeah, that's a tough one," Lee added. "But you're doing the right thing by getting ahead of it." We toasted, and for the first time in days, I felt a small sense of relief. Having people who cared and who were willing to help gave me the strength I needed to move forward. The next few days passed in a blur as Sandra Simmons, the lawyer Lee recommended, sprang into action. She was sharp, efficient, and didn't waste any time. After listening carefully to my story, She assured me that we had a strong case. With Mississippi's adultery laws on our side, we could use Beth's betrayal to our advantage. The priority is to secure joint custody, Sandra said, tapping her pen thoughtfully. If Beth remains a fit mother in the court's eyes, it will be hard to get full custody. But we'll ensure your time with the kids is protected. Whatever happens, I can't lose them, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You won't, Sandra assured me. And we'll protect your assets too. She won't walk away with more than she deserves. Her confidence gave me some relief, but the thought of facing Beth in court still weighed heavily on me. The children were the hardest part of all of this. They didn't understand what was happening, they just wanted their family back. I spent as much time with them as possible, giving them love and reassurance. But I knew I would soon have to explain why things were changing. On Friday afternoon, Sandra called to confirm that Beth had been served with the divorce papers. Just as expected, my phone rang almost immediately afterward. I stared at the screen. With a sigh, I answered. Mark, what have you done? She cried, her voice trembling with disbelief. You can't be serious. I told you, Beth, I said calmly. This is the consequence of your choice. It was just one night, she screamed, as if that excused everything. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, I replied quietly. You destroyed the trust we built over 10 years. That's not something I can just overlook. Beth's voice cracked as she begged for another chance, but I stayed firm. I had made up my mind. There was no going back. Meanwhile, Sandra was also working on exposing the group at the Parkers' house. Lee's journalist friend had staked out the house and captured photos of couples coming and going. By the weekend, the article went live, igniting a scandal that spread through the town like wildfire. The religious community erupted in outrage, and several couples involved in the key parties quietly vanished from the social scene. It was a bittersweet victory. Beth, however, still didn't seem to grasp the gravity of what she had done. She kept calling, pleading with me to come home. Mark, please, she begged. We can still fix this. The kids need us together. No, Beth, I said. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. On Monday, I picked up the kids from my mom's house. They were happy to see me, but I knew the coming weeks would be challenging for them. I spent the weekend taking them to the beach, watching movies, and playing games, trying to give them some sense of normalcy. Their laughter was the only thing keeping me sane. Sandra worked quickly, and soon, our court date was set. We'll aim for joint custody, she said during our final meeting before the hearing. But if Beth tries to push for more, we'll be ready to fight. The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt more prepared than I had in weeks. Beth looked emotional but defiant, still holding on to the hope that I might change my mind. But I stood my ground. In the end, the judge granted us joint custody. The children would spend weekdays with me and weekends with Beth. Sandra had done an excellent job protecting my assets, ensuring Beth wouldn't get more than she was entitled to. As we exited the courthouse, Beth tried one last time. Mark, we can still fix this, she said softly. This, for the kids. I shook my head. We're done, Beth. You made your choice and I've made mine. Walking away from the courthouse, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. The road ahead would be difficult, but at least I knew I had done the right thing, for me and for the children. The days following the court hearing felt like a blur. With the legal battles behind me, I could finally focus on moving forward, even if the scars from Beth's betrayal still stung. Life began to fall into a new rhythm. On weekdays, the kids stayed with me, and I did my best to keep things as normal as possible for them: school runs, homework, and movie nights. Their presence gave me the strength to move on, even though I knew things would never be the same. Beth started seeing other people not long after the divorce, though she still didn't seem to understand the gravity of her actions. Every so often she would call, hoping to reconcile. Her words were the same every time: "It was just one night, Mark. Why can't you forgive me?" But there was never an apology. It was as if she believed that what she did was minor, that it shouldn't have ruined everything. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my work and therapy sessions, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The pain of betrayal didn't fade easily, but therapy helped me focus on healing and being a good father to my children. I went on a few dates, but I wasn't ready for anything serious. The thought of trusting someone again felt overwhelming. One of the few sources of closure came from the fallout of the Parker scandal. Lee's journalist contact had done an excellent job with the article. It sent shockwaves through our small town, leading to several divorces and the dissolution of many friendships. Some couples quietly left town, while others retreated from public life entirely. It was a bittersweet victory for me. Justice, in a sense, but one that came with its own sadness. One afternoon, I received a call from Doug. "Mark, I've got some good news," he said. "We managed to move about a third of your assets into the kids' names. That way, Beth won't be able to touch it, no matter what happens." "That's a relief," I replied. Protecting my children's future was one of the few things I could control, and knowing their financial security was intact gave me peace of mind. Beth's attempts to reconnect continued, but I kept our conversations strictly about the children. I didn't have the energy or desire to engage with her beyond what was necessary. She asked about the audio recordings I had, fearing I might share them with her parents or friends. But I assured her I wouldn't. What she had done was enough of a punishment on its own. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, life began to stabilize. I developed a new routine with the kids, one that felt comfortable and familiar. Every moment I spent with them reminded me why I had fought so hard during the divorce. I wasn't just their father, I was their anchor, the one constant in the storm their lives had become. Beth, on the other hand, seemed adrift. While she still saw the children on weekends, her life lacked direction. She started dating, but from what I heard, none of her relationships lasted long. It was clear she was still searching for something, but whatever it was, she hadn't found it. The kids adjusted well to the new arrangement, though they occasionally asked why their mother and I weren't together anymore. I gave them simple answers. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt each other, and it's better for everyone if they live apart. They seemed to accept it, but I knew the questions would come up again as they grew older. One evening, as I tucked Natalie into bed, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Daddy, do you still love Mommy?" she asked softly. Her question caught me off guard. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'll always care about her because she's your mom," I said gently. "But love, sometimes it changes." Natalie seemed to ponder my words for a moment, then nodded. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing her forehead. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on how far I had come. The road to healing was long and winding, but I knew I was on the right path. I had learned that some people only appreciate what they had after they've lost it, and Beth was one of those people. But I wouldn't let her mistakes define my future. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.